Hello students, this is Diksha and welcome to Semstar Online Learning classes. I hope you all are doing well. In the previous video, we had discussed the first part of your English literature syllabus, that is George's secret key to the universe. And now we will start the second part of the lesson. Part 1 we have already discussed in the second video. This is the third video. So in part 2 or phase 2 you can say, I will explain how Cosmos virtually showed George the formation of a star. So let's begin. Eric clapped. Annie burst an empty crisp packet. Cosmos flashed a rainbow of bright colors across his screen. Now, why Eric clapped over here? I told you in the previous video that Cosmos immediately denied, saying and reminding Eric that George should take an oath, right? And what was the oath? That whatever teaching he is learning, whatever knowledge he is gaining, he will be using this knowledge for the welfare of humankind, or you can say for the welfare of mankind, right? So George immediately responded and he said that yes, I am taking this oath and I will use this knowledge for the good of mankind. And when he said so, that is why Eric clapped. Well done, George, said Eric. Cosmos will now show us how a star is born. Welcome, said Cosmos, playing a little computerized fanfare to the universe. Now, what is the meaning of playing a little computerized fanfare? It means he played certain music to introduce someone, right? The room was getting darker and darker. Come and sit here, George, called Annie, who had already settled herself on the big comfy sofa. Comfy over here means comfortable. She was sitting on the sofa. George sat down next to her, and after a few seconds, he saw a tiny beam of very bright white light. It came directly from Cosmos' screen. The beam shot out into the middle of the room, where it wavered for a second before it began to sketch a shape in the air. But that looks like a... George began to speak. A window, said Eric proudly. Cosmos has made us a window on the universe. Watch closely. Now, a tiny beam of light came out of Cosmos' screen directly into the room where they all were seated. And it sketched a window. A tiny beam of light sketched a window in the middle of the room in air. Now, George was awestruck. He was amazed to see such a beautiful sight, because earlier he had never seen such sight before him. Because I told you that George's parents were technophobes. Technophobes means a person who fears or dislikes or avoids new technology. So it was an incredible sight to see the outside world, to see the space. The beam of light disappeared, leaving the window it had drawn in the middle of Eric's sitting room, hanging in mid-air. It now looked exactly like a real window. It had a big sheet of glass in the pane and a metal frame, just like you can say, a board. Beyond it, there was a view, and that view was not of Eric's house or of any house, road, or town, or anywhere else that George had ever seen before. Wait, I will show you in the picture. Like in this picture, you can see one screen now. That screen is a window which was made by Cosmos. And in this window only, everyone can see whatever Cosmos was showing, be it stars, space, galaxies. Understood? Instead, through the window, George could see an incredible vast darkness, peppered with what looked like tiny bright stars. Peppered over here means covered or filled. It was filled with stars. He started to try and count them. So George was amazed to see such sight. He started counting the stars. George, said Cosmos in his mechanical voice, there are billions and billions of stars in the universe. New stars are created all the time. They are born in giant clouds of dust and gas. I'm going to show you how it happens. How long does it take for a star to be born? George asked. Tens of millions of years, replied Cosmos. I hope you are not in a hurry. Tit, said Eric, sitting cross legged on the floor beside the sofa. Don't worry, George. I have speeded it up quite a lot. You will still get home for dinner. So, as I told you, it was an incredible sight to see the outside world, to see the space. The sky was dark all over with billions of stars. It was an incredible and beautiful sight. And Cosmos asked George that I hope you are not in a hurry. So Eric said, no, 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 he is not in a hurry. And George, don't worry, I have speeded it up quite a lot and you will still get home for dinner. Now, why did he say so? Because George did not tell his parents that he has come over here because he was searching for his lost pet, who was Freddy. He just came over here to search for his pet, and he met whom? He met Eric, Annie, and Cosmos, and that is why he was little bit worried that he had to go home also. I hope this much is clear to everyone. George noticed something about the view through the window onto outer space. Not all of it was covered with little stars. In the bottom corner of the window, he saw a patch of total darkness, a place where not a single star shone. What's happening there? He pointed. Now he interrogated and he asked to Cosmos, what is happening there? Let's have a look, shall we? Said Eric. He pressed a button on a remote control and the view through the window seemed to zoom towards the dark patch. As they got closer, George realized that an enormous cloud was hovering in that spot. Now, what is the meaning of enormous? Enormous over here means huge. He saw what? He saw a huge cloud which was hovering in that spot. Hovering means staying in the same position in the air without moving forward or backward. The window kept moving forward until they were right inside the cloud itself, and George could see it was made of gas and dust, just as Cosmos had said. What it is? He asked. And where is it? It's a huge cloud in outer space, much bigger than the ones in the sky, replied Eric, made up of tiny, tiny particles which are all floating around inside it. There are so many of these particles that the cloud is enormous. It's so big that you could put millions and millions of earths inside it. From this cloud, many stars will be born. Inside the cloud, George could see the particles moving around, some joining together to form huge lumps of matter. These great lumps spun round and round, gathering even more particles all the time. So now over here, George could see tiny particles moving around inside the cloud to form what? To form lumps of matter. And the lump kept on spinning round and round, gathering more particles inside it. But surprisingly, as the lump was gathering particles inside it, it was not getting bigger in size. It was getting smaller and smaller in size. as if somebody was squeezing it. I hope this much is clear to everyone. But as the particles joined together, the spinning lumps weren't getting bigger. Instead, they seemed to be getting smaller, as though something was squeezing them. I told you this. It looked like someone was making gigantic dough balls in outer space. Gigantic means huge. One of these giant balls was quite close to the window now, and George could see it spinning round, getting smaller and smaller all the time. As it shrank, it became hotter and hotter, so hot that George could feel the heat from where he sat on the sofa. And then it started to glow with a dim but frightening light. "Why is it glowing?" asked George. "The more it shrinks," said Eric, "the hotter it gets. The hotter it gets, the brighter it shines. Very soon, it's going to get too hot." What George could analyze was that the lumps was gathering particles inside it, and when something is getting inside something, so it should get bigger, right? But in this case, it was not getting bigger in size. It was getting smaller and smaller in size, as if somebody was squeezing it, as I told you. And it was getting smaller in size. It was getting hotter and hotter too, and it began to glow with dim but frightening light. The ball exploded from the inside, throwing off its outer layers of burning hot gas in all directions. After the explosion, the ball was shining like the sun. "Wow," said George. "Is that sun?" "It could be," Eric replied. "That's how stars are born, and the sun is a star. When a huge amount of gas and dust combines and shrinks to become dense and hot, as you have just seen, the particles in the middle of the ball are so pressed together they start to fuse or join up, releasing an enormous amount of energy. This is called a nuclear fusion reaction. It is so powerful that when it starts, it throws off the outer layers of the ball, and the rest is transformed into a star. That's what you just saw." Now what happened? Soon the ball exploded from inside, throwing out its outer shell, and it transformed into a bright shining star. And Eric also told George that when a huge amount of gas and dust combines and shrinks to become dense and hot, the particles in the middle of the ball are so pressed together that they start releasing enormous amount of energy. As I told you, enormous means huge. They release huge amount of energy, and this is what is called as nuclear fusion reaction. Understood? The star was now shining steadily in the distance. It was a beautiful sight. George gazed at it, amazed by its power. Every now and then he could see huge jets of brightly shining gases sent hundreds of thousands of miles from the surface at extraordinary speeds. "And the star will keep on shining like this forever?" he asked. "Nothing is forever, George," said Eric. Now George was awestruck. It was a beautiful sight to watch. George asked Eric whether the stars was going to shine like this forever. And Eric replied that nothing lasts forever. And yes, it is a universal phenomenon that anything that is born has to perish one day. Right? Adapted From George's Secret Key to the Universe by Lucy and Stephen Hawking. And I hope you understood this interesting lesson, which was related to science and exploring space. In case you are having any problem or you want to know the meaning of any word, then you can ask me. Thank you.